Hello again. I'll begin this video by saying that I am drinking a cup of tea this time. Just a normal, I think it's called Assam tea or something like that, without any milk or sugar or anything. I have sugar, but I don't have any milk, because I rather foolishly chose to finish it off earlier because I was thirsty. I had a glass of milk earlier, which was very refreshing and nice, so in a way it wasn't a foolish choice. But it does mean I have no milk now to put in my tea, hence why I'm now having a black tea. And I also have a grand feast of 2 Oreo bites. So I have 2 Oreo bites to snack on while I film this as well. A snack recommended to me by one of my colleagues on the teacher training course that I'm on. Anyway, so here we are again. I'm being rather cheeky with this video, to be frank, because it is currently 6 minutes past 11 and I need to be up at about 6:30 tomorrow, so I am being a little cheeky in recording this right now, but hey ho, that's life. I'd like to begin this video properly with a poem that I came across yesterday, in fact, while I was in a seminar for my teacher training. The task we were set was to come up with a lesson plan, essentially. And the text I chose to teach, well, wait, no, they told us to choose poetry, I think. Yeah, so we had to choose an item of poetry to teach in a lesson. And the poem I chose is one I'm not familiar with until I found it yesterday, and it's called the Compline, or the Compline. For the longest time I called Compline Compline because it sounded nicer to me. It sounded more French, and the word looks French, so I thought that was how to pronounce it, but I've googled it and apparently the British way is Compline. But anyway, so the poem is called the Compline. The Compline. So that's, I'll give it a read, and I'll just give some thoughts to kind of get our minds going, and then I'll ramble as I normally do, God willing. So, the Compline. Between us there are 101 umber haints in our home. In bed we discuss our future, our children woven in myrrh, sitting in some tomorrow, waiting for us to join and give them our science so they can live. I tell her what I fear. I'll walk into fogged riven woods and die when our babies are too young to carry my baritone with them. I'll become the almost stranger they hear their mother's prayers paint the night sky for. The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh parents every day. Love is no shield against his mighty ginger hand or will. Even language passes away. Even the bouquet of vowels and syllables collected each year can be swept from the scaly floor of the tongue. All stories end in death, if we are honest with ourselves and how the world works. If I am being honest, when I eventually hear my love sleeping by my side, I eye the gloom, whisper to God, ask that he spare me the escape, the emptying out of the marigold light for many years. I ask that, when it finally comes, I not go before I know all I've set my heart upon will live on well before me. I ask him to forgive my selfish maw for having the nerve to call out his name and flood his holy ear with the word. Now, I read that on the Poetry Foundation website, and right after that final line where the literal final word is word, there's an italic word with a full stop afterwards, and it says more, as if you can click on it to view more of the poem, but you can't. It's just it's just a word, like it's a normal piece of text on the page. Clicking on it does nothing. So I don't know if there is more of the poem. If there is, apologies, but that's what I have access to. But I found it yesterday during my seminar, and I thought it was quite a nice one. And it's just it addresses interesting themes of, you know, our own human mortality and our limitations. And I guess that sort of fear of what we can control and what we don't control, the fear of losing what we have, that sort of thing. The idea of being responsible for people you love, and the idea of not being around to look after them sort of troubling you. So, you know, it's particularly relevant to sort of people who are, you know, young families, young parents, that sort of thing. But I think it speaks to just a wider sort of human experience as well. It's just a nice sort of interesting poem I found, and I thought we'll start today with that. Albeit, hopefully this isn't going to be too long a video, because, like I said, it is late and I do need to be ready for tomorrow, because I need to honk shoe, I need to sleep, I need to get to bed. But before I get to bed, let's have a bit of a yap sesh, you know, as the youth say. Let's ramble for a bit in front of the camera, like I have for the past couple videos. Well, first of all, if you're watching this video and you haven't watched any of my previous ones, welcome. This is BriefBurst. It's literally just a YouTube channel where I ramble in front of a camera, my sort of thoughts that I've gathered over time sometimes. Sometimes it might be a bit longer, sometimes it might be a bit shorter, but that's essentially what it is. Last episode was a good few months ago, so I look a little different in it compared to now. I've had a haircut since, as you might be able to tell if you watched the previous video. Yeah, but anyway, that's besides the point. That's not the interesting stuff. Well, then again, I guess it's debatable if any of this stuff is really interesting. The point of this channel always has been just to kind of ramble what's on my mind sometimes and see if anyone finds it remotely edifying and useful. So, okay, and I just quickly apologize if I'm a bit rusty and strange in the way I talk, because it's been a while since I filmed one of these videos, and simultaneously I'm also trying to keep my voice down because both my housemates are sleeping, so I don't want to disturb them. But anyway, so, unless I'd changed my mind since I've finished recording this video, the title of this video is something along the lines of where joy flourishes. That was awful. Oh my goodness. Alright, sorry, ignore that. So the title of this video should be something along the lines of where joy flourishes, evil abounds. And I first had this thought way back near the beginning of this year. Well, not in the beginning of this year, but earlier this year, probably around in April. In fact, it was around Easter time. Well, in fact, it was literally on Easter Sunday, I guess, early in the morning, when I was walking back with my friend, well, one of my best friends and my godson, from the Catholic Easter Vigil at the local cathedral, which was a very special experience for me. It was the first time I'd ever spent an Easter away from home, away from my family, and I didn't do this sort of, I wasn't forced to do that. I chose to because it was just, more convenient for me, that sort of thing, and I had work and whatnot. Well, I say I had work to do in regards to university. I was not nearly productive enough over that Easter break, so that's not really an excuse. But my point is I was there by choice. But we had the Easter Vigil. It was very special. It was very special. When usually, if you are Catholic or familiar with sort of Catholic and Christian practices, then around Easter time you get the new sort of, how would you describe it? Candidates, I guess, joining the church. So people who are getting baptized and confirmed, or just confirmed if they've already been baptized. But the long and short of it is people join the church, they become fully fledged Christians, like an official sense. And they're meant to get the grace of God and all that sort of thing. And basically, I remember it being such a beautiful experience. I remember tearing up a little bit at the baptisms and confirmations as they happened during the vigil. And but long story short, have the vigil. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. Everyone's saying Happy Easter, and then my friend and I, we decide to walk home. But I believe before we walk home, we actually help an elderly fella, this lovely old man, who asked us if we could give him a hand walking home because he didn't live far and he was a bit unsteady on his feet. So we walked him home, had a bit of a chat. He said, we were welcome to come over for tea sometime or something stronger, something like that. And then, we left him at his house, and then we began walking home, and both of us were in very, very good spirits. It's incredible what, something as simple as the company of a good friend and just general light-hearted joy and happiness can do, really, for your mood. That's probably a very strange, to be honest, it's probably a silly thing to say. Yeah, of course, joy and happiness has an effect on your mood. But we were in good spirits, and we were just walking home, and it's maybe about a 30-40 minute walk home from the cathedral, and it was very late. It was early morning, sort of 1 a.m. around that time, I think. So we were walking back, and so you've got some people sort of going home from the cathedral, because the cathedral was full of people, but also you just have ordinary people who aren't Christians or aren't Catholics or aren't practicing, at least, and they're just sort of going about their sort of normal routine, I guess, or nights out and that sort of thing. And I remember my friend and I, we were walking home, and we came across these two women, one young girl and another older. My assumption is that the older lady was the girl's mother and the girl was the daughter. The girl maybe in her 20s, around our age, maybe a bit younger, but I'm not really sure. And then the older lady around middle age, something like that. And the long and short of it was that, they'd clearly, had a little bit to drink, but especially the older lady. And the older lady was basically lamenting some sort of falling out she must have just had with her husband, who apparently had far too much to drink, and had got them all kicked out of a pub, or something along those lines, or a club. And she was, clearly not very happy. She was, basically saying, blah 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 blah. Is that normal or whatever? And sort of talking to me and my friend as we were passing. And her daughter was sort of apologizing for her, saying, "Oh, I'm sorry," that sort of thing. And I remember trying to sort of do my best to console her. And I remember saying, "Oh, well, people do sit. Everyone does, silly things." Or something along those lines. I don't really know if it did help her very much. She did say something in response, but not any kind of response which indicated that my words had much of an effect. But basically, try to be light-hearted and consoling to a degree. I mean, these are strangers. I'm not gonna get buddy-buddy with them. Long story short, we had that sort of exchange, and I remember the look in the young girl's eyes, and I remember the sort of, I don't know if it was quite sadness there, but there was a kind of, I think she was grateful for our attempt to kind of, engage with her mother or her friend, whoever it was, in a sort of kindly way. And something about her smile and just the look in her eyes, it wasn't, I just remember it being just quite saddening to an extent, just to look. There was a sense of helplessness about it, essentially. And considering that my friend and I had just come from the cathedral, and so we were, in good high spirits initially, it was a little sobering to an extent, but, we still kind of had that initial positive rush, so it didn't affect us too much at the time, I think, but evidently affected me enough to still remember a bit of the exchange now. So we walked on, and we got to this roundabout, which is maybe about a 15-minute walk or so from our house, and then there were some e-scooters, and being sort of high on the Holy Spirit, so to speak, I think we had been joking about sharing an e-scooter the rest of the way back, just for a bit of fun, and there was, I think, just like one e-scooter or something like that left at the sort of the bay. I mean, the company itself is called Beryl, so there was a Beryl Bay here by this roundabout, and there was at least one e-scooter. And I remember jokingly saying, if this has enough battery, it's a sign that we need to take this scooter back. So we did, and it worked. And then we had possibly one of the most nerve-wracking and terrifying e-scooter rides ever, especially for my friend, because he hadn't used one before as far as I'm aware. And so I was on front all the way up against the handlebars, and he was sort of clinging on behind me, and the slightest turn of the handlebars, you'd feel the whole thing wobble, basically, because obviously it's way too uneven weight-wise and all that kind of thing. And so we're speeding along this quiet little road on this e-scooter at night, and I just remember my friend being so sort of I guess terrified in a fun way. He wasn't having an unpleasant experience, but it's one of those experiences where you're sort of split between being horrified and scared and sort of exhilarated at the same time. So I guess like a roller coaster in a way, except in this roller coaster, if I overturned at any point, we'd fall over and probably hurt ourselves. So we sped along, and we got back to this barrel bay that's near our house, and we parked it. But just before we parked it, we had to drive around this pub, and there were some people congregating outside the pub. Not a lot of people, maybe a man and a woman or something like that. And they called out something to us as we zipped past, but I'm not engaging with that. I'm just focusing on trying to drive us and keep us safe. So we drive and park the bay, but as we walk back to the house, we have to go past the pub. I think the woman maybe was calling out to me or something, but she clearly she had a bit to drink and whatnot. So I just kind of tried to ignore her, because I don't want to get involved with some stranger who might be a bit belligerent at that time of night. And the long and short of it is, I can't remember if she did or if the guy did, but they basically said some kind of sort of homosexual insult towards me and my friend. And we just kind of laughed it off, I think, and then just walked home. But where am I going with all of this? I was struck by the contrast of the happiness and joy and peace I had felt at the cathedral during the Easter Vigil and afterwards, and then these sort of encounters I had on the way home, and seeing the sort of secular, the secular culture living itself out. And I was just struck by the contrast. On the one hand you had peace and happiness and joy and gladness, and on the other hand you had this kind of sense of, sort of drugging yourself to be number to the pains in your life in a way. And at times numbing yourself to those pains just seems to make things worse. Now obviously that's just from a very, very surface level observation of those people. I don't know them, I don't know what their lives are like. I hope they're happier now than they were at the time that I bumped into them. But my point is that it seems that in life, when you have moments of, significant joy and happiness, there's always something that somehow manages to find its way in and try and sort of bite against that, if that makes any sense. There's always something, maybe perhaps not always, it depends, but it's been a lot of moments I feel where something good has happened or I'm feeling good, and then there's some kind of downside somewhere, something crops up, I remember something I need to do that's sort of slightly stressing me out, or I have an encounter with someone that kind of takes the mood down, or something along those lines. And I just find it interesting that in life there can be those sort of coexistent entities of, something good and bad, which is a very vague and probably quite a moronic thing to say. But nevertheless, I feel that there's something to be said there. I mean, as a Christian, I obviously believe in, good and evil, or at least I believe in good, and therefore I believe in the existence of evil in the sense that it's a privation and absence of good. Privation? Is that the right use of the word? I don't know. I'm not a trained theologian or philosopher. I am a trained English person, I guess, in terms of literature and language, but so I probably should know how to use that word, but well, I mean, what is a university degree for if not for learning very specific things about a specific topic and then not learning about other stuff, so that when people ask you about the other stuff, because they think you're an expert, you say, oh no, I don't know about that, despite having studied for 3 years and paid over £35,000. Yeah. Well, no, I mean, that's a bit of a bleak way of putting it. I'm just using a bit of humour. I don't even think my total student loan came up to 35,000, probably closer to 30,000, but anyway, my point is, as a Christian, I believe in good and evil, and I do believe that when things are going well in our lives, forces of evil do try and sort of distract us from the good and make us forget it and focus more on the bad. Because as human beings, I think this isn't an original thought of mine, but I think we're automatically inclined to focus more on the bad things in our life. We forget the good more quickly. More quickly? Quicker. We forget the good things quicker? Yeah, that's the sentence. And so we need to be careful, I think. We need to try and appreciate all the good things in our life. We can't let them pass away for granted. And it's easier said than done, of course, but I think it's just a matter of appreciating all of the small things and just being mindful and thankful, I suppose. I mean, as a Christian, sort of regularly praying to God and thanking Him for good things that have happened in the day that I can remember is a huge help. Just knowing that good things has happened to me during that day. And good things always happen to me. And I'm not saying that to boast, I'm saying that just to point out that most of the time, arguably, perhaps it's a bit controversial of me, but I would say that all of the time there's always something good that happens to you in a day. I mean, having life itself is good. Some people would argue otherwise, but I don't think that's really a correct analysis of existence. As a Christian, but just as a person, I think life is a wonderful thing. It is good. Yeah, there's suffering, but how can you? The world we live in is pretty messed up. It has its problems. It's just how it is. And I know it's not a comforting answer to someone who's suffering, and there are better answers that I could give. But if I went into it in too much depth in this video would be a lot longer, so I won't go into too much depth. But the short of it is that life is worth living. There's much joy and goodness and wonderful things in this world, like Assam tea and Oreo bites from One Stop. So, is there any real message from this video? I suppose in a way, the message in this video, or my meaning and my hope that people take away from this video if they watch it, is essentially to just remember that, there's good in your life. There is good inherent in you because you are a human being. Your life is worth something, you're worth something. And if you keep an eye out for it, you can very quickly recognize and see all the blessings and gifts that are bestowed to you during the day and during your life in general. And even though there's much evil in this world, and you will suffer and you will have trouble, just don't dwell on it too much. Deal with it as best you can. And just remember that it's not evil doesn't have the last word. I mean, obviously I'm a Christian, so it's very easy for me to say that. But even if you're not a Christian, if you're an atheist, if you're agnostic or anything else, I think it's still very possible for you to acknowledge that there really is no point sort of taking a depressing, fatalistic view of existence and thinking that, life sucks and that's it. Because that's not it. Life is wonderful. In all its ways. And it's easy for me to say that in a way because I have quite a good life. I live in a first world country. I had a good education. I'm not starving. I have Oreo bites. I have tea. I have a microphone. I have a laptop. I have a webcam. I have a bed. I can practice my religion relatively freely, without consequence, in the sense of I won't be decapitated or burnt alive or flayed. And thank God for that, because I'm a weak man, and I am not Saint Bartholomew. Well, essentially, just be mindful that when things are going well, some things will try not to go as well. And when that happens, don't let it derail everything. Remember the good, cherish the good. Deal with the bad as best you can, with the grace of God. And I say with the grace of God, even if you're Christian or not, because, well, technically speaking, God can give you his grace whether you want it or not. Well, okay, actually, maybe, okay. Don't take that for granted. Don't take that with a huge bucket of salt. I actually don't know how theologically appropriate it is for me to say that. But my point is that essentially, you know, nothing is impossible with God. And therefore, from my point of view, even if you're not Christian, God can still use you and, you know, bless you in his own way, in the way that's appropriate to your position in life. So just remember there's good, cherish it, love each other. Don't hate yourself. Don't hate others. And remember always that there always will be good in your life, in some form. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video to some extent and you found it somewhat entertaining. Thank you very much for watching and listening. I do appreciate it. This is a very small channel, but I never really intended it to be a big thing. I just put these videos out there when I can and when I feel like it, because it's sort of fun for me, I suppose. You know, don't let evil overwhelm you and overcome you. Don't let it sort of blot out all the light in your life, because it is quite literally incapable of doing that. The only reason it seems to do that is because you forget about the good things. And, you know, again, easy for me to say, I live a good life. I'm, you know, very fortunate to live the life I do. Many people live in poverty and horrific conditions and in war zones and all that kind of thing. So it may seem even cruel to say that there's good in life. But even in their lives they're good. The fact they're living is good. The fact that they lived at all is good. You know, there's goodness in life that you can't take away. And I strongly do believe that. And I think if more people saw that, the world would be a better place. And again, it's not really the original thought of mine, but it is a position I hold at the moment. I might change it with time, potentially. But in this moment, at 11:34 PM on the 18th of September 2024, that is how I feel. So thank you very much for watching this video. I'm now going to finish my tea and get ready for bed. If you're watching this in the evening, I wish you a good evening. If you're watching this at night, good night. If you're watching it during the day, have a good day. And if you've just woken up, good morning. But whatever time of day it may be, look after yourself. Remember the good. Forget the evil. In the sense that don't overly worry about it. The future will take care of itself, and it will take care of you. And God bless.